question is, are you doing these kinds of range of motion x-rays? This is relatively new. This is something that I've not seen before. And this is something that I know that I've spoken to chiropractors when they talk to lawyers. A lot of lawyers want to send their clients to doctors because they're afraid that a chiropractor who does, sometimes they do these range of motion x-rays, they're not real doctors. But at the end of the day, there's so many reasons why a medical doctor, first of all, they might not take them in time, right? If I'm injured and I can't see my primary care physician for 9 weeks, what good does that do for my injury? And then insurance companies like to jump on that. What we're going to talk about today is why attorneys are mishandling soft tissue injury cases, okay? And why are they doing this, right? It seems kind of aggressive to attack all attorneys. But my experience, I've done this for a long time, and cases go in a certain way. And why are attorneys overseeing these kinds of cases, and what are these cases? Well, what's going on is they're believing myths that are given to them by the insurance companies. And they've given these myths to the legal industry. They've been repeating it over and over again for so long that now everyone just sort of buys in and believes it. And what ends up happening is people who are injured and entitled to compensation, fair compensation, they're getting less. Okay? So what are we talking about? We're talking about what we call missed cases, minor impact soft tissue. And those are basically garden variety car accidents. But the term minor impact soft tissue sort of is the beginning myth. And we've already debunked. There's a lot of research about minor impacts. Debbie can probably talk about that modern cars tend to crumple at higher speeds, so lower speeds transfers more energy. A lot of, like, the whole presentation in of itself, but essentially when you go to the doctor and say, I'm hurt, he doesn't say, well, let me see the car. He looks at you. How damaged the car is somewhat irrelevant. We're going to talk today about soft tissue. So if you're not a lawyer, what is soft tissue, right? Is that an eye? Is it an organ? Is that your brain is a soft tissue? If I were to put a needle through your eye, is that a soft tissue injury? But what insurance companies like to say is, well, listen, it's just soft tissue. It's basically a muscle or a ligament injury that you cannot see on an MRI. You cannot see it on an X-ray. So they kind of doubt if it's even there. They go, okay, it's a soft tissue case. Your muscle kind of hurts and whatever. You're kind of annoyed. I get it. You went to go get physical therapy. But if you go in front of a jury, what are you going to say? What are you going to show them? A picture of what? Of your bruise? Okay, people get bruised. They get banged up. What happened? So here's how the process generally works, right? The standard operating procedure in automobile cases. Somebody gets in a car accident, right? So then they go to the lawyer. And the lawyer says, hey, you know what? You have to go to the doctor, right? And the doctor, they're part of some huge health system. They see 18,000 people a year. They're not really focused on you getting better. They just want to make sure that they diagnose the problem. So they send you to get an MRI because, hey, that's due diligence. That's what you're supposed to do. It's supposed to get an MRI. You get the MRI back, and guess what? It doesn't show anything. There's no disc bulge. There's no herniations. It's your standard. You got a fine-looking neck from the MRI perspective. So you send that to the insurance company. The insurance company says, well, you're not really hurt, and they give you pennies, right? That's what this process is all about. So let's talk about the solution, right? So MRIs and traditional X-rays, they don't show these injuries, right? They show a lot of other stuff, and we'll talk about it. This is an MRI. This is an X-ray, okay? Let's talk about the spine. There are 3 kinds of injuries you can actually have to your spine. It's not super duper complicated. The first is a fracture. Fracture is pretty serious. You literally broke your back. You're going to know if that happened. So, and that shows up on an MRI, shows up on an X-ray. You have a broken vertebra. That's a problem. Okay? That's a major, major injury. The second is a disc herniation. That will show up on an MRI. And what happens is you got these soft discs between your vertebra. You get banged up enough, it starts protruding. You look at an MRI. That's what happens. That's a major injury. The third kind of spinal injury is a spinal ligament injury. And that looks like, well, we don't know what it looks like. What is this? Let's talk about what a spinal ligament injury is. Okay, so this is your spine. And you got these vertebrae, right? And they're the discs that literally are stacked on top of each other. And between them, you have these discs so that when you're jumping up and down, they're not banging into each other. And it's all held together by spinal ligaments that wrap all the way around the spine. And the ligaments don't really show up on these MRIs or X-rays. So the way I like to think about it is, think of it like a stack of poker chips wrapped up in a banana peel. Okay? So if you got a stack of poker chips wrapped up in a banana peel, the banana peel holds all those things together and they don't move around. But if you ever have stepped on a banana peel or a banana or somehow folded one, they split kind of in the middle, right? And once they split, those poker chips start moving around. So let's talk about what that really looks like. You have what's called excessive translation. So now the poker chips of your back, these vertebrae, are moving back and forth. That's a possibility. You can also have, it's called an excessive angulation. When you're bending your neck too much, they're opening too much. And what happens is that movement can impinge nerves, cause a lot of pain. But the only way that really happens is with an injury to the spinal ligament. But how do we prove that? Right? How do we take that in front of a jury? So we do what's called a dynamic range of motion. You heard a little bit about that before. This is what I've been talking about, dynamic range of motion x-rays. And what happens is, you're essentially, instead of just taking a normal x-ray, we're doing an x-ray with a range of motion. We're bending forward, bending backward, sideways, from different angles. And what that does is, they're allowed to take that, and it shows things that you wouldn't see from a standard x-ray. So for example, right here, this is the craniocervical junction, and this is head on, this is the person's teeth, and we're looking like basically straight at them. And what you notice here is this bone doesn't line up with that bone. And if you look over here, it's kind of the same thing. This whole bone here, the craniocervical junction, is shifted over. That does not happen unless you have a spinal ligament injury. And since you can't take a picture of a spinal ligament injury, this is exactly what we have. Now, what they use is something called a computerized radiographical mensuration analysis, CRMA. What is that? Essentially, they take these x-rays, they send them off to a radiologist to measure the angulation between the spine. And now you have basically a range of how bad there is, and now you can rate it. Is it like in the green zone? Is this really not that bad of an injury? Is this thing going to heal in a couple weeks? It's not really that big of an injury? Or is it so bad that it's never going to heal? It might require future surgery? That is what we can use to basically take that to insurance adjusters, take that to juries, because what this really looks like is you cannot have these kinds of movements. You can't have them unless you have a tear in the spinal ligament. So this is a real spinal injury. And the result of it is that you can have a whole wide range of symptoms. Remember, your spinal cord is running through the vertebra, and it goes out at each vertebra into different parts of your body. Those are your nerves. So a lot of times people get in a car accident and they come back and they go, yeah, I'm having numbness. And then, but how do you prove that you're having numbness? You're going to hire a neurologist when there's nothing else going on. That's very expensive. You're having visual disturbances. I'm having headaches. I'm having dizziness. I'm fainting. And insurance companies go, well, nothing's on the MRI. Your person's making this up. How do we know that this is actually all related? Well, now there's a way we can show that it is indeed related. What does that mean? At the end of the day, you can actually objectively prove to a jury, right? And insurance companies, at the end of the day, they're afraid. At the end of the day, what they want to do is they want to manage their risk. They want to know what they're going to pay out. They want to know where this is going to go. And now we have something else we can show them and say, listen, at the end of the day, I'm going to take this in front of 12 people who have never seen this before. They're not doctors. They don't understand this stuff. And I'm going to explain it to them, and I'm going to explain that this is a real spinal injury. Now you have a higher likelihood that in the future, maybe you don't have a slip disc now, but when you have a spinal injury and it doesn't heal properly, then a year from now, 2 years from now, when you're carrying the turkey or the laundry down the stairs and you slip and you hit your neck, that you are more prone to have a major injury at that point. So it's a real problem. And hopefully the result of that is that we can get our clients all the justice that money can buy. The hope is that it increases settlement values. It will increase verdicts. It sort of scares insurance companies into paying out what they're supposed to be paying out and into believing the plaintiffs when they actually say they're hurt and they're not just what they call malingering, which is legalese for faking it. So that's me, HS Injury Law, and that's Bowie. All right, thanks so much.